Have you ever stopped to ask yourself, what is the ocean? The ocean is education. The ocean is science. The ocean is culture. The ocean is life. Join us on a blue adventure to redefine what the ocean means to people and the planet, and to discover how UNESCO programs are helping deliver the ocean we need for the future we want.
Welcome to another episode of the UNESCO Ocean Podcast. I am Vinicius Lindoso, Communication Officer at UNESCO, the United Nations educational, scientific, and cultural organization. I will be your host on this podcast series that takes you on an inside tour of global efforts to study, manage, and revitalize the ocean. Today, we delve into the crucial topic of tsunami early warning and preparedness. How can we use simple knowledge to save millions of lives? How does UNESCO, through its Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission, UNESCO IOC, help governments and emergency authorities around the world to save hundreds of thousands of lives across hundreds of tsunami events? Our story starts in media res, right in the middle of things, in the fateful early hours of the 26th of December 2004, nearly 20 years ago.
I was by the pool. This was probably about 8 in the morning, and we were playing by the pool, and all of a sudden the world starts to shake, and you don't really understand what's happening, and then you start to hear screams. Then you all of a sudden see a black wall, and many times when we think of a tsunami, we imagine a big wave that you can recognize. It's really a massive wall that approaches so fast, and before you even understand what happens, you're being drowned, you're being pulled underwater, and it's, you lose consciousness, and then when you can finally come up and get breath, you don't see the world. You see people floating, people screaming, you see torn buildings, and it's hard to recognize reality in that moment. I mean, a lot happened, and a lot was going through my head. On one hand, I had to take care of my younger brother, who was 5 at the time. I'd never taken care of anyone alone. My parents said, you can't babysit, you're not old enough, and all of a sudden, I had to do it on my own. But they were also helping me, right? Other people, they came, they gave us food, they looked after each other. A Swedish family took care of us. And so, on one hand, while I was terrified, I was also hopeful that I would be able to find my family. And I was fortunate enough that I did. I found my father, then we found our mother and our older brother, and we were united, and not everyone had that fortune. And so it's important to remember that I'm here telling the story because I was so lucky. But there were many, many, many others that weren't so lucky.
We just heard from the Spanish-born Thomas Alvarez Belon. As a child, Thomas was on holiday in Thailand with his parents and brothers when the 2004 Indian Ocean Tsunami hit. His family's survival story inspired the 2012 film The Impossible, starring Naomi Watts and Ewan McGregor. You may have seen it. Beyond the tragic impact it had across hundreds of thousands of families, the Indian Ocean Tsunami also marked a watershed moment for UNESCO and its work on tsunami early warnings. With several decades of leadership in developing and coordinating initiatives to protect coastal communities, UNESCO was propelled by the Indian Ocean Tsunami to lead efforts to build a truly global tsunami early warning system, a system that would protect every at-risk region, country, and community. In this episode, we'll get a glimpse of how it all came together, straight from the mouth of UNESCO's own head of tsunami resilience, Bernardo Aliaga. With his expertise and first-hand experience, Mr. Aliaga provides invaluable insights into UNESCO's activities in tsunami early warning and preparedness, and in this great new program the organization has started called Tsunami Ready. Hi, Bernardo. Can we start by just talking about why was the 2004 Indian Ocean Tsunami such a watershed moment Would you say it was a deadly wake-up call?
The 2004 Indian Ocean Tsunami was indeed a watershed moment and a strong wake-up call for the entire world. It was a catastrophe of biblical dimensions that was called like that by the press at the time. And for UNESCO, that was working on tsunamis, and nobody knew about that for 30 or more years, but with specifically only the Pacific Tsunami Warning System, and despite several calls from scientists and from experts of the Pacific Tsunami Warning System, an Indian Ocean Tsunami Warning and Mitigation System was not in place at the time. So there was no warning available. There were no focal points to receive the warning in the countries. There was no community prepared to respond and to evacuate. So we saw what we saw, a catastrophe. That was the combination of a strong hazard, but at the same time, multiple vulnerabilities that that are related to the poverty, of course, vulnerabilities that are related to broken links between the institutions that are in charge of disaster management and science development, for example. So I will say that it was a wake-up call in several senses. One, on the need for addressing and solving inequalities, but also in the sense of giving and for communities to take more ownership on their own process of preparedness against hazards. Because hazards will be always there, but it's up to us to get prepared to respond to those hazards when they happen. So yes, it was a deadly wake-up call.
We are now preparing to commemorate the 20th anniversary of the Indian Ocean Tsunami. That will take place in December 2024. 20 years have passed. What would you say is your personal stock-taking of our efforts throughout this time? Are we safer from tsunamis today?
Is it that we learn from our mistakes? And then is it that we are able to build a better future by learning from those mistakes? That remains to be proved, probably. The wars that we are seeing in these days are probably playing against that learning. But in the case of things that need science to address specific problems, we are building step by step. And in the case of this Indian Ocean Tsunami in 2004, 20 years later, I think that we are better prepared to respond to tsunamis. We are better prepared to communicate among member states and to contribute and cooperate among scientists and institutions and between institutions at the national level and from institutions to communities and in the community themselves to respond to hazards. So my personal stock-taking is that we are safer from tsunami today than in 2004, but we are safer for tsunamis today than we were in 2009 in Samoa, or in 2009 and 10, February 27 in Chile, or from Japan, March 11. In all those cases, we are much safer because we have learned to use the best of science, the best of organization and technical capabilities of countries and communities to respond to tsunamis.
We owe much of current safety from tsunamis to early warning systems. They protect citizens day and night. These systems are complex and involve multiple countries, hundreds of sensors, and scientists within each country. Not to mention each country's emergency response agencies. These agencies are responsible for making sure citizens like you and me are warned and given time and help to evacuate if a tsunami strikes. But how exactly do these systems work? Let's go through it step by step, from the moment scientists see a tsunami sign, all the way to when the warning gets to you.
How does a tsunami early warning and mitigation system work? When an earthquake strikes, hundreds of sensors along the coast gather detailed information about the earthquake. Tsunami service providers receive that information and issue a tsunami message to national authorities subscribed to the tsunami warning service. If they identify a tsunami threat, civil protection agencies launch evacuation procedures, and citizens are alerted by text messages, sirens, and other media channels. But even if you do not receive a tsunami warning, if you are by the coast, you can use your senses to prevent the worst. If you feel the earthquake, see the wave, or simply hear the roar of the approaching water wall, run to higher ground. Do not wait for an official tsunami warning. Your life is at stake.
Hi again, Bernardo. We're back with you. After hearing these instructions, how important do you think it is that people follow them? Mainly running to high ground when they get a warning or when they realize there's something funny going on with the ocean in front of them.
If you decide not to run, and if you decide to wait and see if something is happening, is at your own risk. There are chances that you might not survive to a tsunami that comes in 15 minutes, because even if that's a 50 centimeters depth water, that water is plenty of rocks, of debris, is arriving at 25 meters per second. So the fastest bike running against you. So if you are a child of 7, 8 years, or if you are an elder of 75 or 80 years old, you will probably not survive. If you are strong and you can still run and climb a tree, might be that you will be lucky, but your chances are minimal.
Wow, that's a very strong message. And I hope it's a message that all of our listeners will take to heart and really commit to memory should they ever find themselves in such dire situations. You heard it. If you spot anything going on in the coast, if you receive a message in any way, shape, or form, or if you just have an instinct that something is going on, don't wait. Run to high ground. As some of our listeners may know, we are in the middle of a super exciting moment for the ocean. The United Nations Decade of Ocean Science for Sustainable Development. It started in 2021 and will go all the way to 2030. When it comes to tsunami preparedness, the Ocean Decade, as it's known, wants to create a safer ocean for communities around the world, building a truly global tsunami early warning systems and making sure that communities know what to do and are able to do it when a tsunami strikes. Bernardo, how close are we to that goal?
Building an integrated early warning and mitigation system for tsunami in the world is still an objective to be achieved. We have complete development phase with a consolidation phase for the regional systems, several national systems, and even many community systems. But that's still not complete. We have both national capabilities that are missing in some places. We have community capacities that are missing in several places. And we have yet to integrate other sources that are non-earthquakes of tsunamis, like we saw that with the Tonga volcano eruption, like volcano sources for tsunami, and like landslide generated tsunamis, in particular submarine landslides. These are very, very, very difficult to detect. And then for volcano, we have a little more advanced, but for landslide generated tsunamis, there is still a lot of work to be done, both in science and in community preparedness. So how far we are from a perfect system, I will say that we need to fully integrate in the existing system tsunami alerts for volcano, and then in the future, tsunamis generated by landslides. And then for earthquake-generated tsunamis, we are well covered, but for local sources, when you have only 10 to 15, 20 minutes to react, then we still need to work with many communities in the world.
So, Bernardo, can new technologies such as artificial intelligence make tsunami early warning systems even more reliable and timely? Can we dream of being able to detect tsunamis and earthquakes before they actually happen?
I like to think that that artificial intelligence might be helping to improve our existing early warning system, not only for tsunami, but for many other hazards. For instance, I think that machine learning is a promise. I think that as we work with sensors, then having a machine learning process to run over tens of years of data and compare that data with actual events, and then take lessons out at the level of probabilities of tsunami happening with some specific signals. One seismic event has at least 5-6 different signals. So a machine learning process might be very useful for early warning centers. Then what I don't want to give the impression that we can have a machine delivering a warning, because you will always need a person behind that machine to read the data, to read the result, and to make a conclusion. So you need a geophysicist, a seismologist, to read the conclusion of the machine learning process and take a decision. That decision will not be taken by a machine. That decision needs to be taken by a person.
Throughout its history, UNESCO has helped governments and scientists put together very robust regional early warning systems to detect tsunamis as early as possible after an earthquake. But are communities ready to do what it takes when a warning is issued? How does UNESCO actively engage communities to empower them to respond effectively?
To prepare communities, it's not a speech that they need. It's to own their own process, to know their hazard, to see what are the vulnerabilities, where is the people that might suffer most of a tsunami, the elder, the children, where are the places that are probably most in danger. not only because of the height of the tsunami, the hazard, but because also of the vulnerabilities of people. So we still have hospitals that are in flooded or potentially flooded areas. We have schools that are in tsunami flooded or potentially flooded areas, meaning that we already had tsunamis in some places and we still have restaurants. We still have schools even. We still have police or Navy offices in places where we didn't have a tsunami in the past 20 or 30 years. But we cannot just leave those places. What we need is to be prepared at the community level. And for that, we have a process that is called Tsunami Ready, that is built on the experience of the United States, that developed a system for community preparedness, working with FEMA, the Emergency Management Agency of the United States, that was developed over 25 years. And then we took that example as a best practice. We installed that in the Caribbean. We tested with Caribbean member states. We have places like British Virgin Island or Anguilla and others joining that experience. And in the end, we managed to get a global agreement on the importance of tsunami readiness, and then branded the full process of developing a community to be prepared against a tsunami with the name Tsunami Ready, taking the good experience and the best practice. There are many other systems in the world that are similar. In New Zealand, you have the Blue Line. In Japan, the preparedness is at the level of the prefecture. So it's not only the US that developed that one, and there are many others. And we are trying to federate all those experiences and perhaps keep the branding of the Tsunami Ready UNESCO IOC preparedness process for tsunamis. So we have a target of having, by 2030, 100% of communities at risk. What that means: communities that have an hazard, but also that have vulnerabilities that need to be addressed to make sure that they respond and that they run to high ground when there is a tsunami coming. So what is UNESCO doing on that? Federating the efforts, federating the scientific community, the disaster management expert, the political will, and the budget that is required for that at national level to get 100% of communities ready by 2030.
Now, I imagine that very few of our listeners will know this, but for the disaster risk reduction community, the 5th of November is a very special day of the year. It's when we promote efforts to effectively warn about and respond to tsunamis. It's called the World Tsunami Awareness Day. So Bernardo, can you tell us what is this World Tsunami Awareness Day and why it's important that we celebrate it in the first place?
The World Tsunami Awareness Day, that is commemorated every 5th November, is an initiative of Japan. And that's very telling about the consciousness and the importance that they assign to the preparedness against tsunamis in Japan. They proposed that to the UN General Assembly, and they got the approval of all member states of the United Nations to commemorate this 5th November as the World Tsunami Awareness Day every year. It is important because it's an opportunity, and we use that opportunity, for example, to calibrate and use that date to put together drills, community drills, exercises. So people running at the same time in several countries that generate a strong awareness. It's a public awareness exercise. When we mobilize 1 million people in the same day in the Caribbean for the Caribbean Wave exercise, you are creating awareness. There is a multiplier that is over 4. For each people that participate in an exercise, there's at least 4, but depending on the demographies of the different countries, it could go to 8 or 10 people that get knowledge and is better prepared for the next tsunami.
And now, I'd like to wrap up this wonderful interview on a really personal note. Really talking about you, Bernardo, not just as head of the Tsunami Resilience section at UNESCO, but as a citizen from Chile, a country that has experienced so much pain and destruction and loss of lives due to tsunamis. What drives your passion and commitment to work in such a complex and challenging field? Could you share with us a memorable experience or story from your work that has had a significant impact on you personally?
Personally, what has driven my work on tsunami is one specific experience. It's about a girl of probably 6 to 7 years old in a country in Central America that was living in an isolated area without communications, without transport, public service, etc. That was in an area that was prone to tsunamis, living in an area that was prone to tsunamis. So I realized that there are many girls and boys that are at risk of tsunami. And I realized that we have a lot of work to be done to make sure that those are saved when a tsunami comes. So my personal emotional drive is to save lives.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of UNESCO Ocean. I hope you enjoyed learning about how UNESCO plays a leading role in protecting communities around the world from the risk of tsunamis. Remember, knowing what to do when you see a sign or when you get a warning about a tsunami incoming, run to high ground. Know how to best protect your community and to save lives. I hope you continue to join us to learn more about how UNESCO works to preserve and sustainably manage the ocean through the next episodes of the podcast. Don't forget to subscribe in whatever platform you use for listening, and leave a rating and review to help us reach more people who are passionate about our ocean. Thanks for listening, and I look forward to seeing you in the next episode of the UNESCO Ocean Podcast.